Welcome to the In Between podcast. Today I'm talking with Heather Laganelli, a multi-talented entrepreneur, business owner, podcast host, YouTube personality, community leader, and artist. She founded Locale Eatery, a popular dining establishment in Bakersfield, California, Mural Alley Bakersfield, a rotating public art space, and The Vault, a public art gallery. Through her artistic endeavors, community involvement, and entrepreneurial spirit, Heather shows up in big and inspiring ways. Heather, I am so excited to have you. You are like queen of entrepreneur, reading your bio, reading all the things that you've done. So I feel like this is just going to be a super impactful conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to start with just your background, like how you grew up. We were kind of discussing about your creativity and your entrepreneurial spirit. I feel like you were probably born with that spirit, but I would love to hear from you, like what was your childhood like and how did it make you into the person you are today as far as a business owner and artist?
I feel like it's such a crucial part of the conversation. So when I look back at my childhood, my dad, he comes from like a family of musicians and just people that are entrepreneurial and business minded as well. And then my mom, she went to school for fashion design and she's like also a business owner. And so my dad plays the guitar and he sings. And my whole life, I can remember like coming home after school or like on the weekends or whatever. And my dad would just be like playing different music all the time. And so I grew up around like entrepreneurial mindset every day. And my dad's parents owned three businesses in our community, beauty salon, a video store, and a restaurant when I was really young. And then my mom, she comes from like a really big family where she was one of eight siblings. She's the oldest girl, second born. And her dad was just like a really like impactful person in her life. And he encouraged her to like do the like to follow her dreams and to do things in a different way, I think. And he's just a really like honorable man. And I feel like that combination of those two people in my life really like set the tone for what was possible in my life. And from a creative perspective, like my mom would always get me involved in everything under the sun. Like I don't know if it's because as a child she didn't get that experience because she was one of eight. So there wasn't this like let's do activities, let's do like all of these things. It was more like it was different, I'm sure. And so she really prioritized like I danced, I did tap, I did like ballet, I did gymnastics, played sports, I went to after school programs. We signed up for the YMCA back in the day was like a place for, do you remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that was normal then, like forever ago, people would go to summer camps and stuff at the YMCA. And so I got to sign up for different things. We got to pick like two different camps to do every summer, my brother and I. And as a result of that, I feel like I was exposed to like trying out new things and not being good at something, which I feel like is like a crucial part to exploring like who we are and what we're capable of.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. One of my favorite women entrepreneurs is Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx. And one of the things that she says in interviews is that her greatest life lesson was that her parents would sit her down at the table and say, "Oh, what was your failure today? What did you fail at? And then what did you learn from it?" And it's such an incredible perspective that her parents gave her because she wasn't afraid of failing. And I think something that you're reflecting on right now is like you were able to try all those things, and if you weren't good at them or you didn't like them, move on to the next thing, but you were also given the opportunity to try to get better at it.
Yeah, and I don't remember there being like choices of like not doing something. Like I don't ever remember it being like if you don't like this, you don't have to do it. I just remember it was like you're doing these things
Yeah.
and then there was like choices on which of the things I wanted to do more so like what class do I want to sign up with at the museum? So I think my parents just wanted a break during the summers, if I had to guess, because they both worked. And
Yeah.
I'm sure they were like, go do something. Because I
Try
even look
something.
back, I was telling this story the other day, actually on Instagram, because my parents, when I was really young, they sent my brother and I to Florida without coming with us. Like, I was like seven and or maybe eight or something. And they gave me a camera to take with me and my cousin, my dad's like cousin or whatever lived in Florida. So we stayed with them for like 3 weeks or something. And I remember having this camera and it was film. This was like film camera days.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And so I remember like loading up the film and sitting at the window and taking pictures of clouds. Like I had never seen anything so like magical in my life. And then I think I went through like a whole roll. And then I get to Florida and there was like a rainstorm and like a rainbow and like palm trees like blowing in the wind. And I took a whole nother roll on that. And when they developed the film, they're like, where is the people? And like, what happened? And I was like, oh, I was like mesmerized by this like creative outlet that I had at my
Mm-hmm.
fingertips that I could just do whatever I want with at like
Mm-hmm.
8.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. So, where did that transfer into adulthood, into becoming an entrepreneur? Like, was that always your plan to be an artist, to be an entrepreneur, or had you discovered a different path before that?
I thought I wanted to be an art teacher.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I was like, that's the perfect job. I get to be around art all the time and have fun and like create and all these things. And I ended up doing an internship in, I think it was my junior year in high school. And I did middle school art and then elementary art. And I did not like it at all.
Good
Like,
thing you did that internship.
I know it was terrible. I remember thinking like, why are these kids painting these people like purple? And like there was just so many things that my brain was like, oh, okay, like how do I not suppress somebody's creativity, give them the freedom to be and
Mm,
do and like experiment on their own and still like show up in a meaningful way for them. And I
mhm,
noticed for me, like I wasn't done, especially at that age, I wasn't done with like actually doing the things. Like I wanted to like get in there and get my hands dirty and like I was doing plays and stuff at the time and like doing backdrops and like sets and set design. And I loved just like seeing something through to like completion from like
mhm.
a blank piece of something, you know? And
Yeah.
I remember thinking like maybe when I'm like 65 I could teach or something.
You really wanted to like experience it and do it for yourself, and you weren't ready for that teacher role.
Yeah, I wasn't. And even later in life, I ended up teaching here actually in town as an art teacher in a transitionary period when like the world was like all over the place during the 2008 recession.
Yeah.
And I still remember thinking like a kid would raise his hand and he's like, Miss Heather. And I'm like, did you try? Like, if I go over there and you did not try, I'm gonna be so disappointed. Like, do not raise your hand. And I think that's
Yes.
it comes back to this whole like having that courage to just start something and having the
Mm,
courage to like not be afraid of failing. And I feel like an artist, I don't know, I saw a quote somewhere where it said something like a true artist is someone who is willing to show up and not be afraid of failing. And like working through those failures is what really turns into the art. Like there is really there's this like courage to just put it out there and like see what happens.
yeah, that's so true. And it's such a beautiful reflection of also being a business owner and starting something, because I believe it is a form of art and it's a form of creativity, because you're creating something. Maybe it's not necessarily a painting, but you are creating something, whether that be a community, a business, and you don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't know. And I mean, let's face it, there's going to be multiple failures, but you get to decide to keep showing up. You get to decide to keep trying and kind of reinventing the wheel as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's like failing forward, like
Mm-hmm.
failing forward towards like whatever it is that's going on. Like, okay, we did this one thing, and then how can I make that better? And like kind of building upon our failures and our experiences and opportunities. And I found myself actually saying that I'm not afraid often of like doing hard things. And I feel
Mm.
like I'm reframing that now because I'm looking at ways to be more strategic, in my life moving forward and getting smarter with the way that I like see out whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that. It's also like there is a time in your life, I think, especially in younger years, where you just take the shots. You're not scared of failing, and you're not necessarily strategic about it. But then it's like that second half that you start to move into that's like, okay, I'm still not necessarily scared, but I'm just going to be a little bit more cautious as far as like the strategy behind what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, I think that there's so many ways to like take on new projects and adventures. And I feel like having fun and like really leaning into joy is one of the ways that I've like been able to like continue to lead a passion-filled life.
Yeah, well, especially with an artist background and as a creative like yourself, like I think if you take that fun and joy out of it, it defeats what you're trying to build, right? Like you're not happy anymore because now you're just a CEO that's running a business.
And I find that happens a lot, as we
Oh
get
yeah.
good at something, people turn their passion into a career, and then like the joy and the passion of creating is sometimes removed from the day to day, and it turns into like managing and administrating and doing all these things that are not part of like joy filling things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Locale Eatery, your restaurant is celebrating 10 years. So,
10 years.
congratulations in that.
Yeah.
That is wild. I mean, seriously, that's such a feat. So, congratulations. I would love for you to explain to my audience what this restaurant is because it's so much more than a restaurant. It's so much more than just a space. And I mean, tell us all the secrets to making it 10 years because I'm sure it wasn't a snap of your fingers easy.
Well, I think back to that time too, and I feel like I was in the position to where I was like, I'm going to say yes to something.
Yeah,
I'm going to say yes to something that maybe I wouldn't have known, maybe I wouldn't have said yes to if I had known like all of the details of it all.
of course.
Now that I look back, I'm like, wow, Heather, you were so just like gritty, like
Hmm.
I just had this like sense of wonderment where I was like, what's the worst that could happen? And when I look at that, I think like it's probably a benefit, you know, knowing that I didn't know all the things and just saying yes to something. And I still do that to this day. Like I'll say yes if it aligns with my purpose and like
Hmm.
creating a deeper sense of community and spreading joy and showcasing like that life can be beautiful, even if it's like not really like easy,
Yeah.
like sometimes it's just going to be weird and we get to find ways to like have fun, even if we're working like 14-hour days or something.
Yes.
And so I look back at those days and I think, I was just willing to put in the work every single day. Like I showed up in a way that was really like dedicated and committed and consistent. And I had this vision of before I started the restaurant, I was doing a lot with weddings and events and like the creative side of my life. I went to college to become an art therapist, double major in art and psychology. And through that process, I learned that art was really something that I was called to. Like I thought it was what everybody could do. And then I
Mhm.
realized like through schooling that I had a gift and I was able to like lean into that gift. And so ultimately through creating jobs and like businesses and other businesses before the restaurant, this just kind of trickled into this experience of life, whether it's through flowers, through catering, through like custom cakes. I was doing photography for weddings and events and day of coordinating and all of that. And I realized that there was this big need out there for people to feel like connected to creativity in a community setting and for them to be able to like bridge the gap between like their dreams and what they wanted and actually like getting those things done. And I felt like a lot of people in our community were like hungry for that at that time. And so when I looked at the opportunity to start a restaurant, I thought it would just be a really great platform for people to get to know who I am and to kind of create like a connection to what I was capable of, to use it as like a tool to expand my reach, basically. And I didn't realize like how much of a need there was for creative food and inspiring food in our community. And so when I take all of those factors into like wanting to become an art teacher, my passion for the arts, community connections through like theater and stuff when I was younger, and then my love for just connecting with people and like photography and food and like creativity, it made sense to me to start something like that. And I don't think I did it in a way that would like if I were to do it again, I don't know if I would go back and be like, let me just take all of my life savings and pour it into a restaurant and work my butt off for 10 years. Like I don't think I would choose that path again. I think I would try to like find an investor and maybe even re rework some of the logistics of it so that I didn't have to work as hard because I definitely chose a path that was like the gritty path, and the restaurant itself represents so much to our community and to me. It's just an extension of who I am and like the things that I'm passionate about. And it's really cool to be able to like showcase like local people in our community and to like give artists and artisans of opportunity to shine. And I think that's what really has set our restaurant apart over the years because it's never really been about me. It's about
Yeah.
everybody that's in our community and sharing like the beautiful things that we have to offer.
That is incredible. I love that it's such a dynamic space and it's not just your average restaurant. So, could you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you offer outside of obviously the delicious food?
Yeah. So we do cooking classes. We have a mural space that's on the back side of the building, and it's like it wraps around to the front, and there's probably like 200 feet or more linear feet of like public art. And then in the back, I just partnered with a artist in town. Her name's Laurel, and she has Powell Curated Goods, and she basically has been curating this gallery space in the back dining room as well. So it started off with me doing the vault, and then it evolved into outsourcing that and giving lots of artists an opportunity to showcase their art and sell it in a more like professional, like curated way than just like, oh, friend, like you're an artist, like come by and like let me hang up some of your artwork. So now
Yeah,
it's like it looks great. It's really awe-inspiring when I walk back there now. And then we
yeah,
do
that's
team building
awesome.
experiences. We do like the cooking classes, like I said, we'll partner with community corporations and offer like well-being workshops, so many different types of things. We just partnered with somebody that is wanting to like reintegrate children that have autism into the community. And so we'll be teaching cooking classes to them as well. And I actually, when I first started, I started doing a lot of craft experiences like the first year because I was still like so deep in the art world that
Yeah,
I would do like wreath making and like I partnered with another artist in town and we would co-facilitate painting experiences and stuff like that too. So
that's
there's so
incredible.
much.
I love that you didn't just take one lane, right? Like you did something different. You combined your passions and you've created a space in a community. And that is one the dream, but two it's also the way to success is doing something different and serving people beyond just food or beyond just a place to gather. It's combining those things that is going to make everyone feel seen, heard, and then obviously fueled by your delicious food.
Yeah, and I feel like the food is, I mean, obviously, the creativity in the food is like unique in itself. And I feel like it's more like scratch food that is inspired by like what I would do at home. And I'm not afraid to like bring elements in that maybe some people wouldn't think about doing. Like, it's not the easy way, it's more like gourmet comfort, locally sourced with like a twist. And like today or yesterday, I went on the news in the morning and we did this like creme brulee French toast, and it was a
Mm.
butterscotch creme brulee with the French toast was soaked in chai. And so it was like a chai soaked French toast with butterscotch, and then we bruleed the top with a torch. It's so good.
Oh my gosh, I'm about to drive there just to try
Come
that.
visit. Yes, please.
That sounds delicious. Oh my goodness. I think it's incredible that you've been able to build such successful businesses and brands while maintaining the thing that drives you and the joy and your purpose, which, as you've said, is the creativity, is the art, is the joy. How do you think you've not gotten lost in the business side? How have you been able to maintain that passion?
I think it's just intentionally setting time aside to like do what fuels me. And I
Mm,
try to find opportunities to be in flow. Like when you know those times when you just like lose track of what's happening in your world
yeah.
and you're like, where did the last 6 hours go? So I constantly will look for ways to just like remind myself of like who I am and my why and like root myself in that creativity. And even if it's like taking a class at a time that's not really feasible or going on a trip, like traveling out of the country or going out of town for the weekend, like I feel like I haven't really lost sight of who I am through the process. And I think a lot of people that I know in business have like adopted a different kind of mindset and where they've like, it's like you show up and you do these things and like fun is not an option. And for me, like
Mm,
I've really wanted to live my life that was rooted in fun and purpose and joy and creativity. And I was like not willing to sacrifice that.
I
So
love
saying
that.
yes, even when it was hard, like,
I,
like not even like
yeah.
it's not convenient.
Yeah. And I'm like, I need to be better about living my life for the fun, like you said, because it is one, obviously business is serious, right? Like our names are on this. We take it seriously, but it's also something that just has been serious. And I honestly think it's because for so long it was such a masculine field of like, put your suit on, we're in business. And it's like, as women, we do have that creative flow. We do have that feminine energy that allows us to have fun with it. And if we lead that way, like we can create such incredible businesses that also build community and drive value.
I love that you said that because I feel like so many times in my life I have taken myself so seriously.
Yeah.
And I actually do these things sometimes where I'll go to like a workshop out of town and like do like self-development kind of work. And I've had the opportunity to work with so many amazing people in that field over the years. And through that work, I've learned that sometimes I'll have you like write a letter to your future self. So
Mm-hmm.
like one time I was at this place, it was called the Playful Space event, and another time I was doing some work with Clemmer, and both of them had me write letters to my future self. And every letter says, Heather, life is not that serious.
I
Have
love it.
fun. Smile. Like the littlest, tiniest reminder of just like you get one life. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be over in like a blink of the eye. Like
Yep.
it's not that serious.
Yeah. And I think it can feel so serious when you're in the thick of it. Like you said, right? Like you took the path that was probably a lot harder than you anticipated it to be, having your life savings, putting everything on the line. If you were to go back and you were to speak to, the younger version of you, an inspiring entrepreneur who wants to build something, what advice would you give them, and how would you direct them to keep fun at the center versus, feel so serious when they're working 14-hour days trying to build what they want?
I would say to dream bigger. I think I've always like I've dreamt and I've pursued my dreams and I feel like dream bigger and make asks. Like ask people like for stuff even if it seems like outrageous. Like
Yeah.
I feel like every time that I've shown up and asked somebody an uncomfortable question, whether it came to like an investment property or like some kind of like opportunity, like it's most often been a yes. And I
Mm-hmm.
would have never guessed in a million years that somebody would just be like, yes. And I found it to be that if I can, the bigger I dream, the more I just follow the things that fuel me, the more likely I am to like succeed at those things.
Yeah, that's such an incredible reminder because I think so many times we're so scared they're going to say no. And it's like, that's the worst they could say. Like, if you are already expecting to hear no, then when they say yes, you're going to feel shocked and you never know what could come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's something I've learned with this podcast, especially like I'm on season 3 and season 1 was easy, right? I have all these female founder friends. I'm like breezing through guests. Season 2 comes. I'm like, wait, I ran out of friends. And I had even big guests, and I'm like, why am I not asking these women? Like, these women have a whole circle of female founders that they know. And it was so scary to ask a simple question, but they had already been on the podcast. They were excited to share and have someone else's story be shared as well, right? And so it's like asking those questions are so important and asking for help. As far as being a business owner, I know you mentioned that you're into personal development, professional development. What are some other hacks? Maybe they are, you mentioned the flow, maybe it's your self care that has kept you centered within yourself while also building all of this.
I think it doesn't matter what it looks like is one of the things that I tell myself. Like oftentimes I feel like we get so like caught up in the like I'm doing these things and like this time and like this is the way I'm gonna roll this plan out and whatever. No, like at the end of the day, like I'll say yes to stuff even when it maybe isn't like a convenient time for me because I know that I prioritize like that me part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll do some kind of like creative like journey. Like last night or the night before I went on the news, I said yes to going on the news at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the segment was the live segment at like 6 a.m. And so the next morning. And I wanted to bring like really creative elements on and not just be like on there talking about some basic something. And so I like packed up my entire car, like front seat, back seat, trunk, everything with like experiential food based experience for them. And I kind of worked it through when I was done with my day ended at like 9 o'clock at night. So I started the planning at 9 o'clock and I finished at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I feel like in the moment I was like, Heather, like, why are you spontaneous like this? Why do you say yes? And then I'm like, no, Heather, you know what? You know yourself. You've always been this person. This is who you are. This is who you've always been. Like, learn to accept yourself for who you are and embrace that. And like, whatever, like, who cares? Like, you're not going to be tired. You'll be fine and you'll get through it and you'll like it. And you'll be so grateful that you said yes at the end versus like wishing that you had said yes when you said no.
I love what you just said because really what you just said to summarize is the key is to get to know yourself. Like the more time you spend with yourself, the stronger your business will be because you know how you can show up properly in your business. Because what you just described personally is my nightmare being up till 3 a.m. But that's because I know myself, right? Like I am someone who need sleep. And so I would need to prioritize that earlier. But the reason that you were able to make it work and thrive is because you heard that invitation and you were like, it's go time. Like, let's start, get the creative juices flowing. We can do this. And that's like the beauty of it. But I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we hear, let's say we hear your formula and we try to paste it directly into our lives. And it
Yeah.
doesn't work because I am not the type of person you are. And so I think it's really experimenting, listening to other entrepreneurs, listening to other business owners, seeing what works for them, and then discovering it within yourself, what works and what doesn't.
Well, and I think like the reason I had started it off with, not being afraid of what it would look like, I think is like my real secret sauce. Because I feel like a lot of times in life, people have like box themselves into this like one character like of a person, like this certain character set of a person. And as a result of that, it turns into this like, oh, well, I do these things this way. And this is how I show up. I work from 7 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. And like, this is my routine in my day. And I feel like that's where a lot of opportunities are missed because so many people aren't willing to just like think outside of the box when it comes to opportunity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how amazing is it to be able to say, like, I'm going to show up and do something. I'm not going to negate all of the other commitments that I've made in my day by saying
Yeah.
yes to this like thing I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to still stand true and not let anybody down. Make sure that I'm like honoring myself and the people that I've already committed to and find a way to make that happen. Now, what my biggest challenge is I show up all in. Like everything that I do is like all Heather. Like it's not like basic, boring, like simple. And so when I look at that saying yes, like I can easily scale back and still be myself and do something more simplistic. I just haven't really like opted for that often in my life.
Yeah. You
So,
go all in with all you have.
yeah, so I think like making sure that if I find myself in the routine of like it looks this way, like I do these things and then I have this and then I eat whatever and then I do this, I think it's easy to kind of like pass up opportunities without even realizing it. And so
Mm-hmm.
staying open to potential and possibility has been something that I pride myself in and knowing that it doesn't have to be like this exact way that I envision it being.
Yeah. Do you battle at all with imposter syndrome or fear when it comes to maybe making certain investments for the business or, getting through challenges within the business?
Every time that I've said yes to doing something that I really don't know what I'm doing, it's always worked out for me. And I feel like it's wild when I look back. I worked in an engineering firm for a little while and they offered me like a really good position right after the recession. So it was during the recession actually. So 2008, I was running a business. It was a jewelry business. I was at the Valley Plaza Mall, which is here in Bakersfield, and I had two kiosks, like those little like shopping kiosks in the center of the mall,
Mm-hmm.
and the rent was like $15,000 a month.
Wow.
It was crazy. And I remember thinking at that time, like, this isn't looking good. Like, the economy is starting to tank. People are really like dialing in on their budget. And I don't feel good about providing people with something that's like a luxury that could potentially like take food out of their children's mouths.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I made a pact to myself to never do something that wasn't like a necessity or something that was like just for the sake of making money, even though I loved the jewelry business and I loved like the joy that it brought to people.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that time and I was like, okay, I'm gonna transition from this into the business that I was doing during the day. I'll do it at night and I'll teach art. That's when I started teaching art. And somebody reached out to me and they're like, Heather, we're looking for a project management position to be filled in our company. The girl that has it is pregnant. I met her doing like an event at night one night, and she's like, my position pays really well, and I think you could do it. You're similar to me. She was an interior designer. I've done interior design as well, by the way. And she's like, you could do this job. And I was like, okay, I'll go to the interview. They offer me the job, and I remember going home at the time. I was in a really long-standing relationship, and I was like, I kind of feel like if I say yes to this, like I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if I'm capable of doing what they want for me. I don't even know what they're expecting of me. And he was like, Heather, you can do anything. And I was like, I know this. And at the same time, like, I'm feeling like anxious about it. And then I was like, you know what, Heather, if you're feeling anxious, then it's probably a good thing. And leaning into that, like, when I'm scared, do it anyways kind of mindset, like,
Mm.
even then, back in 2008, that was something that I embraced. And I did feel like, what am I doing? And I feel like that gave me the confidence to prove to myself, like just internally, that I could do hard things, and it worked out really well for me. And I think every time that I say yes and do those things, it's like building that inner confidence and like growing from that.
Yeah, it's like you are proving to yourself that you can do it every single time you show up when you feel that way.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
And I look at the restaurant, I started the YouTube channel, I look at the mural space, like the mural alley space. People were just they had a hard time with that concept in our community because painting over, it's a transitional space. So
Mm.
we've hosted over 200 artists in our space right now over the last, I don't even know, since 2018 is when I had an opportunity to start the mural space. And in the community, people were like, you're going to paint over these people's work. And I was like, yeah, I saw this concept in Miami. It was the Wynwood Walls, and they transition out these murals every like few months. And so just sticking true to like what I believe in and like the vision behind and my why, I feel like has also like helped me with that. I know that imposter syndrome is a real thing and like a lot of people experience it. And at the same time, I feel like I know who I am and I'm proud of the person that I am.
Yeah. If you trust yourself and lean into that, then you know the answers are there. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced, maybe some of the biggest in betweens of being a business owner, an entrepreneur, an artist, and how did you navigate those?
I feel like I've lived in California now for quite some time, and my family is from the East Coast. I was born and raised in Massachusetts and Worcester, and not having like a really strong support system out here to like lean on, I feel like has been something that was really challenging for me over the years. And being alone and like as a single woman in a restaurant space and running a restaurant and not turning to like drinking and like getting drunk, and like just kind of pacifying some of the things that happen as they would happen, I feel like has really like served me well. And the pandemic, I would say, was one of the most challenging like times. I mean, for so many people, we had some stuff happen at the restaurant that just compiled before the pandemic really even like was underway fully. We decided to do a like the first day that they closed everything down, we decided to do a renovation because we couldn't serve people. And so I was like, I'm going to take the money that I have and I'm going to invest it into the building and I'm going to turn it into a space that will be really user like accommodate the people that are coming in. And I've invested so much money and I didn't realize like how long the pandemic would last. And so that kind of like started me off at like a negative and it
Mm.
never came back around for like 4 years, and still to this day, I feel like our business has shifted so much. And then also during that time, our roof collapsed.
Oh,
Um, and it was like I could see the sky, like yeah, like not like
oh
a
my God.
regular, like no big deal thing. And getting through that was really challenging too. And like it kind of set those two things really like set me back a lot from a financial like perspective. And deciding to take on debt, like during the pandemic, things did not really shift, and it just seemed to continue to kind of like downshift. And not being afraid to take on debt based on the things that I believe to be true and like valuable to our community, I felt like that was a time of like showing up and showing up in big ways and showing people that like we were like close knit, kind of like during 9/11 that happened too, where we
Mhm.
kind of all like band together and like supported each other. And I felt like I didn't want to quit. I wanted to show up all in. And I decided to not drink during that time too, just to keep a really clear head. And I feel like all of those factors, leaning into the community, creating like kindness movements, doing a lot of like really fun, interactive things that brought people together to make them feel good, really like got me through and like our team through those times. And it was not, I mean, everybody had their own experience of that. And that's what I think is also a beautiful thing. I think the pandemic has really connected us in a lot of different ways as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that it disconnected us, but I think there are so many people who do feel that it connected them, and I think it is through business owners like yourself that chose a different path than failure, or chose a different path than maybe the stress that was being felt by the world as a whole during that time. But I think it says so much about you and so much about your business that you've made it to the other side despite all of that, and you probably made it out better, and that you chose kindness and you chose joy and you chose fun even in the midst of like a business owner's worst nightmare, if we're frank.
Well, I think too, I kind of would say, like, even then, I would be like, this is a challenge, like, I
Mm-hmm.
looked at this time as an opportunity to, like, think outside the box and, like, do fun things. We've done a lot of catering over the years, and, like, catering was really what kept to help us, like, stay afloat and, like, overcome. And when like gatherings were no longer permitted, it was really interesting to see what types of catering could be done. And we did a lot of like virtual classes and experiences. We did like charcuterie making like
I love it.
virtually, and it was a really unique time to be in business, and I feel like there was so much opportunity to really think outside the box. And
Yeah.
I personally thrive in those kind of environments, and I'm learning to find ways to be more strategic and not to have to thrive under pressure like that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with a coach and a mentor right now that she's like, girl, like you already know that you can do anything. Like you have proven that you are resilient. You have
Mm-hmm.
proven that you are resourceful. And right now we get to work on this last year. We get to work on like you not having to be those things. And for you
Mm.
to be able to say like, I have choices that I choose and want to make versus like responding to these like, you know, catastrophic things.
Yes, absolutely. I have a friend who I've interviewed on this podcast before, Catherine, and she's a balloon artist. She owns a balloon artist company, and her family value for herself and her husband and kids is, when our backs are against the wall, we get creative. And that was what I was thinking about when you were speaking, is like when things get tough, you can choose to just like run and hide, or you can choose to get creative and just figure it out the best way that you can. And while that's not always, it can still be stressful. I think in those times of creativity, you learn so much about yourself and about the things that you truly want out of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, I would love to wrap up with a final question talking about the in betweens. And if someone is listening to this podcast right now and they're in the in between of their life, what advice would you give them?
I think that the mentorship part that I had just mentioned earlier, I feel like there's so much value that I've gained from aligning myself with people that just have more knowledge than I do.
Mm,
Like connecting with people that do things really well or have done what I even want to do has changed the way that I look at things. And it actually like it sounds so simple because it maybe to some people it wouldn't, but for me, I feel like it's really simple. It comes down to how many people do I know and like how many people do I find value in having conversations with? And
mhm.
then really just being intentional with the way that I choose to spend my time and the people and the conversations that I choose to have. I feel like that has really shifted my trajectory and prioritizing like being around people that are dreaming like I am versus like disappointed in the way that they live their lives.
Absolutely. I love, love, love that tip because it's so true. Like community, mentorship, having people in your life, both to encourage you, but also to tell you, like, hey, you need to level up, you need to dream bigger, is the key to dreaming bigger, is the key to having an incredible life and chasing your dreams and doing all the things.
Yeah, and I think about like accountability, right? As a business owner, I mean, I'm sure that you've experienced this where we are in our like own lane often. We're just like doing all the things and we're making stuff happen. And at the end of the day, like who is holding me accountable? And I found myself doing little things along the way to like keep me accountable. Like I would tell a friend that I was going to do something, or I would post something on social media. And that's been a really great tool for me as well. Like just being really vulnerable on social
Mm.
media has kept me accountable because then I'm like, okay, well, however many people saw this, now I get to like really truly like lean into this a little bit heavier. Right now I'm looking for love. I hadn't prioritized like dating really in the last like 9 years or so. I was in probably like 22 years of my life I spent in like long-term committed relationships.
Mm.
And I felt like I chose business, more recently, especially with the pandemic. I was like taking life very seriously. And I'm prioritizing love this year. And by making that statement like boldly, it's not something
Mhm.
that people often talk about. And it's also drawn in a lot of really cool people into my life as a result of it. And I feel like it's holding me accountable because now, like I just told you. And so I'm like, what's out there for me? I don't know. And bring it.
Yeah, and people are going to follow up with you and say, "Oh, like how is that going?" And I mean, you never know who people know, right? Like you never know, they could know your future husband, they could know your future person, and it's just one conversation away from that.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that level of accountability, like even though it is in a public way, it's not something that we've really leaned into for many years. This is like a new thing that so many people have access to this like wide world of the internet, in the
Yeah.
last 20 years or so. And I feel like that's also a magical thing in itself. So I don't know what's in store for the next year. And I feel like just in the last month and couple weeks, it's been really interesting to see how it's been unfolding.
Well, and that's the most exciting part, is to see where the year takes you.
Yes.
I am so, so grateful for this conversation. It was very life giving. And I think personally, selfishly for me, I loved it. So I can't wait to share it with my audience. I would love for you to share. I know you have so much, so I'm going to make sure to link everything in the show notes. But I would love for you to share with my audience where they can learn more about you, if they're in the area, where they can come visit your restaurant. And I know you have YouTube, podcast, all those things as well.
Yeah, so the restaurant is Locale. It's Locale Eatery. We're downtown Bakersfield, 1727 18th Street. And then there is a website. We have Instagram and Facebook. And then my YouTube channel is called Joy and Living. I've recorded like 45 segments and I'm still in the process of doing the post editing. So there's only a couple up right now and they'll continue to be released. And then Mural Alley is Mural Alley Bakersfield, and that's on Instagram. And I have a blog that I used to contribute to a lot, like way back in the day, and I'm gonna start probably getting back into that with a lot of the renovations I've been doing, some interior design work. I don't know if you can really like see in my
I
space,
love
but
it.
there's a lot of creativity happening over here and looking to expand upon boutique style rental spaces in our community too. So
That is incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with my community and sharing your story. It was really just an incredible conversation. So make sure that you guys follow Heather and all of her businesses. We'll put everything in the show notes, and make sure you follow at In Between Combos on Instagram. We'll catch you later.